Alrighty, we'll get started here. So I wanted to first thank everyone for participating today. I know we have people from all over the world here chiming in and to listen to a great group of panelists and partners of ours about indoor mapping for public safety and kind of some of the trends that we're seeing, some of the challenges we're seeing, and where we really view the future of this as individual companies and even some of our clients. So I'm going to start with some housekeeping rules. Everyone's muted for quality assurance. Please use the chat and QA section for the webinar if you have any comments or questions. We'll try to address those and certainly follow up if we can't get to everything. And then the webinar is being recorded. We'll have this available on our YouTube channel in a few days, and everyone will receive a link to the recording when it's live, and you guys can share it out. I wanted to start off today with a few polls just to gauge where everyone is at in an indoor mapping journey. I know some people will just be starting to learn. Maybe this is the first webinar it enticed you and you're just starting to think about it. I'm sure others are even possibly fully implemented in using indoor mapping inside of their organizations, either public safety or just in general inside your jurisdiction that you're in. There's so many use cases. There's dual uses of data, and we'll get into all of that today. And so I wanted to start out with that question of deployment status. And you guys should start to see this pop up on your screens. And we'll really gauge kind of where everyone in the room is at. And maybe we can modify and think on the fly in some of our questions to make sure that everyone gets really good value out of this. I see a lot of these coming in right now as we see them, and a lot of the questions are really about the value. And then there's quite a few that are collecting data. So I think a really good mix here. So we'll definitely try to hit on some questions about some value. I know we're going to hit on some questions about collecting at scale, and then dissemination over the webinar. So give it a few more seconds. We've got pretty good response here. Alrighty. I'll share those results, and then we can see here that most people are looking for that value, but we do have a good amount of people that are actually collecting data and looking for different solutions. So we will go on to the next one here, and the next one is talking about that value. These, as you guys answer, a lot of you are trying to put a pin on the value of it. Hopefully these intrigue you with some of these questions, and we'll go into some of these today. So we'll give this about a minute and share the results again and see where everyone's at. Alrighty, a few more seconds here. All right, end that poll and I'll share it. We can see here that while a lot of the participants are looking at where the value is, a lot of them might know, you guys might know where the value actually is. It probably comes down to funding. Like everyone has that need, and trying to weigh all the competing priorities. So we'll talk about some of that today as well. So I wanted to welcome you guys again and introduce some of our partners and clients that are on this panel. We have Eric from NextNav, Todd from RapidDeploy, and Casey from NCT. And I'll let them introduce themselves, give you a little background from the organization they're with, and they'll be answering questions today. And then any questions that you guys have in the chat, we'll try to feedback through them as experts in the field and answer all of those that we can. So Todd, since you're off mute, do you want to go first?
Who's that for?
Todd.
You cut out just as I said that. So my name's Todd. My name's Todd Kamenetsky. I am the Vice President of Partnerships and Strategy at RapidDeploy. I think it's one of the coolest jobs here. So my job is to kind of work between all the partners in the industry that bring data, our product teams on how to bring that data through the platform to our customers. And so I've been asked to join you today to just kind of share what we do with our mapping and analytics products today. Obviously, this is much more focused on mapping. We're in around 1,300 PSAPs across the U.S. today that are using it, including in North Central Texas, who's on the call with us today. So really, my perspective is from the 911 center, from the software we're providing to them, and some of the things I'm hearing from the industry.
Casey?
Hi, I'm Casey Cox. I'm the 911 GIS Data Administrator at North Central Texas Emergency Communications District. My agency's ultimate goal, our ultimate responsibility is 911 call routing, not responder routing, but call routing. We get the call to the right call center as quickly as possible. And along with that, we've taken on some additional responsibilities, mostly focused around 911 call takers, their licensing and continuing education. We host an academy to do that. And then we try to help them do their job to the best of their abilities. And after we do our job, their job is to get the responders to the incident. So because of that, we provide a dispatch map. Like you said, we're using the RapidDeploy Radius Plus dispatch map. We are 40-ish. We have a couple training centers, so I think we're about 43 of those RapidDeploy PSAPs right now. But we are really looking into indoor mapping. There is legislation coming out related to school incidents and what information needs to be available to first responders. We're a big region. We cover 13 counties. It's roughly 1.5 million people. I think we're up to like 1.7 now. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 schools, if I remember correctly. So we are looking for a way to get that data, manage that data, and provide that data for all of those 300 schools in our region and to all of our call takers. So we've got a big project on our hands.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. Eric?
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Great to be here. So Eric Loberg, I'm the Director of Solutions at NextNav. NextNav is Next Generation GPS, and we were providing precision Z-axis location to data to agencies. And really, we do that via partners. So we have the data, and I have the great job of helping enable partners leverage our data and deliver to agencies. So it's great, and we're excited to be here, and really excited to talk about indoor maps and the value, not only that, but how we play a role in that. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, everybody.
And finally, my name is Matt Donenville. I am the product owner of indoor mapping solutions at DATAMARK or Micah Baker. I joined about 9 months ago from Esri, one of our partners, and really creating some products and some great solutions in the DATAMARK space around public safety, but in greater Michael Baker for all kinds of clients. really focusing on the whole life cycle. So data collection using survey technology, conversion techniques, all the way to dissemination and making something it's very tailored to the public safety space, with integrations like CCTV cameras, kind of an indoor street view to give that situational awareness to the first responders. I think today, the first question that we're going to start with really has to do with kind of this great, we really have a broad background of panelists here, coming from different spaces. And so really wanting to hear why indoor mapping is important for their organization, and then how, and we'll get into a little bit more about some of the common themes that we often hear. So like scalability of data, how to collect it at scale, and then dissemination of data. And so I think we have some experts here on these different sides to really add some valuable information. And so Casey, I really wanted to start with you and ask, why is NCT interested in the indoor mapping space? I know you touched on it a little bit in the intro, but I know there's a lot more to that story.
Yeah, there is. So we kind of set out on this mission. Like I said, it's all for us, it's all about that emergency response. Before you can respond to an emergency, you have to know where it's happening. So our once they answer a call, then they got to know where it's coming from. So we have done some calls and read up on some studies from incidents that have happened in schools in the past. And we're really trying to learn from those incidents and provide a better tool for all of our call takers. We started down this path a couple of years ago at this point. We started with, well, all of these schools should have floor plans. So we put out a call, if you have floor plans, send them to us. And we quickly found out that just because the school had floor plans doesn't mean it was something we could use. We had school districts. We had data provided to us that was in every format you could imagine, including a scan of a hand-drawn map. We tried to automate the process of digitizing those floor plans, and it was just such a mixed bag of data that we received that we quickly figured out that wasn't going to work. And even the ones that provided what we thought was really great plans turned out to not be useful in some cases. Now some were excellent. Some were just sent to us in a format we couldn't use. So then we just have to find some way to convert the data, but then we can use it. So that's good. But in that process, we've done like several pilots now. We got to figure out, for one, how to either get the data in a usable format or collect new data that we can use. And then we have to turn that into information that is useful to the person using it. So we have done some interviews with call takers and asked what do they need to see. And really it turns out it depends on the jurisdiction. We have some jurisdictions that have SROs, school resource officers, on site at every campus all the time. And those call takers said, we don't really need to know where the school's cameras are. We don't need to know where the fire extinguishers are, because the school resource officer will be handling all of that. We just need to know where the call is coming from, what classroom, what teacher is teaching in that classroom. Others that don't have those resources already on site all the time, they really want all of that information in the dispatch map so that they can tell a caller, there's a fire extinguisher 3 doors down, can you get there? So we're and then we also know that we're collecting data. Our first, our main, I would call them our clients, is the call takers, but we're collecting data that's going to be useful to all these other first responders as well. On the boots on the ground folks, the police, the firemen, emergency management. So we're trying to do it in a way where we can serve our clients, but then also help the others who are out there trying to help. And we haven't quite figured that out yet. So I'm excited to here to learn from everybody else as well.
Thanks, Casey. I think that's a really unique perspective from someone that's closest to, I mean, I know you have stakeholders, and then being able to relay a lot of that information from those stakeholders that are really close. Some really good perspectives of how to keep data. First off, how to collect data at scale, which is a challenge, and then how to keep it maintained, and then up to date. Things like, or people like teachers change every year, or if people have block schedules and the teachers move. I know you talked about that one, and that's a really unique perspective of kind of the importance of live data and in kind of spatially aggregating different data sets, maybe things like classrooms and schedules, and having all this information in a single spot for first responders. So more on the dissemination side, I wanted to hear from both Todd and Eric. Eric, I'll let you go first on why indoor mapping is important for NextNav.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's actually been an interesting journey for NextNav. You know, we developed the network in response to the FCC mandate for wireless carriers to provide accurate Z access with their calls. So our founders had a technology. We built out a near nationwide network to enable the obtaining accurate Z access with plus or minus 3 meters. So that's great, but how do you see that, or how do you visualize that? And that really has to be brought into the PSAPs, and it has to be done through applications, right? So and visualize it in 3D. So kind of our next phase in our journey was to start helping tools with visualization of 3D and to locate it. So, hey, I've got Z access. Now I want a visualization of where they're at. And we've done that, and we've showed that to people. And their next immediate question is, okay, I know what floor they're on. How do I tell where they are in that floor? Or can I see my indoor maps, right? And visualization for it. So that was really kind of the genesis for us on getting it, and why we're interested is because it enhances the solutions that we deliver, and it obviously enhances it for the call takers. And then that's led to the flip side of collecting that data and working with partners such as DATAMARK and others, and even agencies when they want to collect that data. And they wanted XY indoor maps, and now how do we bring Z access and accurate Z access to that data? And we have tools for partners to do that as well. So they're capturing their data and they snapshot the level that it's on as well. So that's really where we're here to help with the data collection and adding an additional data point to your indoor maps.
Thanks, Eric. And Todd, on the grand scheme of spatial interface, love to hear it.
It's interesting because, of course, Casey is a great example. That's one of our customers. We have customers across the entire country at very differing levels, right, of maturity in this space, right? Some are already well down the road and they have a plan and they've been working on it for months, and others are just starting the journey. And so the context for me is always around the application we provide, and that is, so Radius is at the call taker workstation in the 911 center. So the telecommunicators using our map. So the context for indoor floor plans for me was, as Casey mentioned, number one job, find out where the caller is. And so quickly identifying where they are, and interestingly, when they're indoors. So because we're integrated with the 911 telephony system, the map is going to automatically index to that location. And our job is to tell them everything we know about that person calling or that location. And Casey, I never get the statistics right, but not every call that goes into 911 is all hands on deck, emergency, right? There are some calls that are fairly routine. They're emergencies, but they're fairly routine. because we're automatically connected to that telephony system, during those most important calls, having the person be able to glance over at the map and immediately, like, I'm getting a call from someone inside a school. Like, that's a very different workflow than someone who's calling 911 that's on the side of the road, and they say that we're on a tow truck because their car broke down. Well, that's not an emergency. It's important to them, but it's different. So when a caller is indoors, especially in public areas, the context quickly changes. And when those seconds matter, how do you get the right resource in the right area, and that they know how to access that building and get to that caller? So instead of asking, where are you, and having the caller describe their location, the telecommunicator might be able to say, are you in room 204 of Smalls Elementary School, right? Seconds of translating where they think they are. Same exact challenges for public spaces like office buildings, big campuses, malls. And the one that I always laughed about was, how many of us are likely to know if you're in the east or west end of the mall at the time you're calling 911? Like, you don't have that context in the emergency. So how do we automatically surface that data? So having a floor plan that automatically shows up, geo-referenced with the agency's authoritative GIS, speeds up the process a lot. And 911 call takers, Kesu, back me up, they don't have time to go searching for this. It's not like, flip through a book. They've got seconds to start rolling resources. And if they don't have the information, they'll just keep pushing on without it. And that could be much more contextual. So they may start rolling resources, then keep doing the research to find it. But Case talking about flipping through those books and looking up or trying to find the system to log in to get to. It has to be in the context of the call, automatically kind of put together. But also mentioned that you said that single source of the truth, right? So how do we make sure that single source of truth, because it's not just the call taker, it's the school resource officer, it's the fire, police, EMS that are responding, and maybe adjacent counties responding. It has to be one true single source of truth that everyone can get to the same floor plan and have that information be consistent. So, for RapidDeploy, my job is really just to figure out how to work with all our different customers at all these different maturity levels, but find a way to surface that data in the flow of the 911 call.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I think the where everyone's coming from on the panel, I think it's great because everyone's coming from a different angle to it, all serving a common public safety client. But we heard a lot of similarities, making things as quick and easy as possible. I mean, having to click different applications to find maps and saying, is this floor, is the main floor the first floor, or is it the second floor? Things like, when I talk in hotel conference rooms, who knows what Albuquerque room is? And was that Albuquerque room last year, or has that changed? That's all really vital information to both serve as the call handler, but also the dispatched support. There's uses for both. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of good themes here. I think one of the things that DATAMARK's really looking at is public safety professionals they need the maps because they're the ones not going in to these rooms every day, these buildings every day. They need them because they really don't know the intimate inside of a school, but when they're called, they need to know. So that really gets into both the data curation, but really the data maintenance, aggregating and working really closely with building owners of these high incident, high occupancy buildings, kind of the first tier of what people might map, is really important in having this aggregation strategy to make sure that data stays up to date. Obviously, schools are kind of what tugs at our heart the most. I mean, it's where our kids are, and unfortunately, there's a lot of incidents there. But there's so many buildings out there that have this purpose to be indoor mapped, and really this first round of what makes sense to get mapped first, the high occupancy, high incident areas. So the second question is really geared towards how are we making these maps? There's like Casey said, like Eric said, like Todd said, we see a lot of different sources. People have their data, but the school's blueprints that we were in last week from 1950 that have water stains and coffee stains on them and haven't been updated. The room numbers aren't right. Obviously, they never took into effect what teacher is in what room. It's really hit or miss if those are even valid starting points. Geometrically, they might be close, but there's a lot of that attribution that's not there. So it's really a balance. From the DATAMARK side, DATAMARK is inside of a larger engineering firm that has decades and decades of survey technology and scanning with LiDAR and really precise millimeter accuracy. But in the public safety space, is that really, do we need millimeter accuracy, or do we need to be able to scale and do 300 school buildings in the next couple of years just because we need that data and we need that data to be accurate? And so what we're really seeing is this tiered level, this argument of what's the dual use, because every building has the facilities guy that wants the engineering grade data for indoor mapping that he can update blueprints off of, versus the public safety that really wants it done fast and they want to know that that door's in the right position. If it's within a few inches, probably even a few feet, they'll be happy. So there's different technologies for that. From LiDAR being very precise, kind of takes longer to deploy and costs more, but has a great dual use of engineering data, to photogrammetry, that's kind of that middle ground where it can be collected really fast, and make really good indoor maps off of. Boots on the ground, where you're just walking around and measuring some areas and getting kind of a rough sketch, but very current. And then the whole conversion process. And so there's all these different ways to collect that data. And I'll say that all the jurisdictions that we've worked with, it's never just one. There's some conversion, there's some data that we have to go collect new. Some areas maybe have a capital improvement project that they want to share data with, and they want really precise data. And then some just have a public safety focus and want what's there now, current 360-degree imagery inside, so they can get that situational awareness. And so I wanted to start with Casey and ask about kind of the different, I know you have a really good and robust stakeholder group, and you've tested some of these different technologies. So what are the challenges that you're really finding around this data collection problem?
So we started, like I said, a couple years ago by asking for floor plans. And what we found, we've done a one more focused pilot study, and we found that we thought we had, this was a more rural district, smaller district. I think there were 4 schools in the whole district, and one of them we thought we had really great plans for, and one of them we could tell they were a little bit older. So we said, well, let's take these 2 schools and just do it, see what we can get out of it. Well, it turns out the one that we thought we had really great plans for was a school that was originally the only school in the district, and it had been added on to 5 different occasions. And when they did the add-ons, they only provided a plan of the addition. They didn't like fit it to what was already there. They just gave them a separate plan. And over time, someone had gone in and basically, I guess, used some kind of software to just kind of fit them together. So what they provided to us is the floor plan for the school. We couldn't use it. We couldn't get it to georeference. And of course, at the time, we didn't know this. We're just like, why is it? The scale is so weird, because sometimes it fits here, sometimes it fits there, but we can't get it to fit across the board. And then the one that seemed like the older plan, was actually the original plan. That building hadn't been changed at all. So it turned out the one where we thought we were going to have a harder time, we actually had an easier time with that one. So we georeferenced and digitized, and then we went out to the schools to try to put that additional information. That particular jurisdiction wanted to know which way the door swings, either into the hallway or into the classroom, what the material of each door was, and then fire extinguishers, locations of fire extinguishers. So those were our three biggest things we were trying to capture, and none of that was included on the plans. So we got in there using a mobile data collection app on cell phones. We tried cell phones, tablets, 2 different iPhones and an iPad, I think is what we used in the field. And we thought we would be able to go out there, connect to the Wi-Fi. We knew that the district had some type of location device that the teachers wore on their badges. They could push kind of a panic button on their badge, and first responders would know where they were, is what we were told. So we're like, okay, there's some sort of geolocating going on in these buildings. So we thought we would be able to go in, connect to the Wi-Fi, and have that same location accuracy. We did not. Once we got inside, there was no location accuracy at all. So the data we were collecting, we had the floor plans visible in our mobile app, so we could ballpark where the door was and enter that information. But there's a lot of doors in a school. I mean, I went to school, so you'd think I would have realized that, but I did not. I was overwhelmed with the number of doors that we were trying to collect data for. So, and like doors within doors. We got into an elementary school, and there were 2 classrooms side by side, and then the middle, which the doors were locked, so we couldn't actually get in there, looked like a closet. Turns out those were actually private bathrooms that the 2 classrooms shared. We didn't know till after the fact, and we're showing the sheriff the data we collected, and he's like, oh, that's actually not a closet, that's a bathroom. And so there's just a lot of stuff we realized it really is going to take a facilities person, maybe custodial staff that could help us with that. There's got to be somebody that's with us that has keys to doors and has the knowledge to know that we need to go in there. That particular sheriff's department also was interested in knowing where the stationary furniture was. So the junior highs and high schools that had science labs had kind of bigger stationary desks that wouldn't be able to be moved, but also would provide kind of a place for people to hide. So that was something that with our little handheld GPS units, just trying to ballpark where we were putting those points, we couldn't do it. And then especially once we got to that larger school that had been added onto, and our floor plan was not, we weren't able to geo-reference it. So we quickly realized how far off we were. We're in there trying to put points on door points on classrooms, but we knew the classroom wasn't in the right place. So it just got real confusing really fast.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. So I want to hear from Eric on how NextNav helps organizations do this a little faster with enrichment of data. But first, I wanted to jump, and I've been monitoring some of the questions in chat. So one of them was around imagery and enhancing the indoor maps. So there's the indoor mapping and doing the original data collection. If it's things like conversion of data, digitizing, you're getting kind of what's there. So oftentimes sometimes we do that, and then we go and do a visual inspection and get things like assets. So when you call in for an emergency, the call taker can say, hey, there's an AED like in the room next door in the conference center, and things like that aren't often on blueprints. If you employ technologies like 360-degree cameras or LiDAR, there you can actually embed those inside maps. And so you can click on photospheres and see kind of what's in that that space for better situational awareness. Kind of goes on the same aspect of CCTV cameras and supporting things like drone imagery outside doors. So first responders in the back of a fire cab on the way to an incident, they can kind of see and recognize what they'll see inside of a building on the way there. So those are all overlays on top of the maps. But Eric, I wanted to continue with you and hear about how NextNav can kind of enable this map creation and enrich it.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, Matt, that we've seen working with partners is just an additional data field or data in regard to the indoor maps that they're creating, and that's adding the Z-axis points to them, right? So you leveraging our Pinnacle network that delivers Z-axis, they use a tool, and as they're collecting data, they go ahead and they grab the Z-axis while they're there and they add it into their data set. So I mean, that's really our biggest contribution to that piece today, and it's going well, and it's actually growing faster and faster as we scale. I mean, ideally for us in the future is how do we just embed that into their data collection app, so it's not an additional step, but it's just doing it along the way. But I think those are things we'll talk about in the future.
Awesome. And Todd, what how does RapidDeploy really help take this to supporting different file types, since it all comes in different ways, and really working to get the most current data into your system?
Yeah, and so as a platform, right? So Radius, the map, it's designed to be media agnostic, but hosting it and exposing it to Radius is a requirement. We have to be able to ingest that somehow, right? And so as a cloud solution, there has to be a way for us to bring that data out. So whether a customer hosts that or a partner hosts that data has to exist somewhere. And I think that also lends to that single source of truth, right? Having one place that everybody can get to it through a variety of applications. But from a file structure, so we obviously support, Esri is a foundational partner for our platform. So Esri-based GIS data, clearly, like, in terms of the gold standard of everything that you could do with Esri data, getting that as a floor plan. So we support that. But we also support data sets such as georeferenced image files, right? So one of our partners, Critical Resource Group, they produce a set of image files that are georeferenced. So they still can be placed on the map and you can see them. But I've even had customers say, hey, here's this Esri layer with a bunch of links to my PDFs. Again, wherever they're at in that journey as being agnostic, I have to find a way to surface what they have. But from my perspective, I think generally find it essential that the floor plans should display seamlessly within an agency's authoritative GIS. So when they see their GIS data, the floor plan should be visible automatically on it. From a best practices perspective, I'd say, going through Casey's comment right there, human verified, right? Somebody actually went through and they could tell you where everything is. To Eric's point, the Z-axis, you have a 3-story school or a 4-story school, it's very simple to collect that data up front and make sure the Z-axis data. So when a mobile comes in and they're on the 3rd floor, you don't have to ask the caller where they are, especially in situations where a caller may not be able to speak and they've dialed 911. You want to know what floor they're on, and you don't want to try to guess because, right, there's 3 or 4 floors and they're all different. Again, best practices that I've seen, the commonplace names of rooms, whether it's the name of the conference room or the gymnasium or whatever, the cafeteria, people refer to it based on what they go to every day. They don't refer to it how it's typically on building plans. Being able to georeference everything, right? So again, being a map company, I want to be able to plot the location of a caller in relation to where I have for data. So I need to understand the edges of the GIS data, the image, whatever that might be. It's funny, as you look, and Casey's probably gone through this, we got floor plans and they're referenced based on the street, not north facing like every other map is that in our system. So now you have to take a map and you kind of have to turn it sideways to get it to line up with what you're approaching as a vehicle. But I think, those couple of best practices for me, and having it all overlaid with the GIS. And ideally, if you have the ability, Matt, you mentioned video cameras as well, like having the video location of video cameras and how to access them on the same map, right? That's where we start to get what we call the single pane of glass, where all the resources you have are kind of in that one spot. So my job is to kind of help our customers collaborate in that space and bring all that stuff together. But from a who hosts it, we have customers that host their own, and I guess ultimately I do see that this is part of their GIS estate, right? The indoor floor plans is location and map-based information. Some of our customers and agency host it themselves. Some of them rely on partners to host it. That strategy needs to be decided, but it probably needs to line up with your Esri strategy, because again, having a single source of truth and one area to go to, I think is going to be critical.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd.
Yep.
Looking at time here, I wanted to get to our last question here. And this is really around the future of indoor mapping and public safety. This is kind of a new journey for most people, but it's really a foundational data set to get indoor mapping and GIS tied to really expand upon a lot of things. I know tracking of first responders for their safety inside incidents, data are collecting data better, faster. These are really some of the things that we're looking at. More of these robust integrations are all keys. And then kind of my product is really taking the focus on the maintenance side of things. So DATAMARK has a product called Inside that focuses a lot on the aggregation side. So interfacing with building owners that have the intimate knowledge. The school's going to know first, and the administrator is going to know first that teacher's not in that room anymore. They do class schedules, how to get that aggregated up, the data updated, and then pumped in. So kind of a maintenance platform, but with exports to things like RapidDeploy or CAD platforms that have the ability to display indoor mapping data. And really that comes from this really common indoor mapping data format. And so we build on top of the Esri platform. They're great partners. I know Todd does. A lot of GIS users here. And so adhering to indoor mapping strategies for geospatial indoor mapping is really key. It really makes it cross-cutting. I know there were some questions on the polls earlier, probably around funding of this. I will say that every indoor space has a public safety aspect to it, but it also has the main aspect of that space. A mall's first business case is not public safety. It needs a very big public safety view on it, and public safety needs that data. But there's a secondary use case to that indoor mapping data. It could be for all kinds of uses, facilities maintenance or commerce analysis inside of a mall environment, or schools. It could be there for their own security and safety, or all kinds of extra use cases. So really this data in a common format can lead to a bunch of secondary use cases. But I wanted to start back with Todd and hear, I know you have some great ideas about really how this is in its infancy, but it's foundational to get it in some of these data models to enable these next frontiers of indoor mapping for public safety.
Sure. So I guess today, I agree. We're highly focused on the foundational data, right? We need floor plans. They need to be collected, maintained, hosted. We need to serve them up to applications such as us, but other applications. I always laugh because we all rely on driving and walking directions from our mobile devices, and public safety will as well. in the very near future, we expect this data to be visible by the field, by the first responders in the field on their mobile devices or in vehicle systems. So as they're approaching a vehicle or as they're in a building, they can understand where they are, as well as how to enter and exit the building safety. Routing the scene and the entrance point today we get, right? We're like, go to the southeast door 5. But in the future, it might say, go to southeast door 5, go in, take the second hallway, then turn right and go to room 501, and then show you where you are on that map. And almost more importantly, show where that responder is back, right, to the first responders that are outside the building, including their altitude and their location very precisely, because sometimes first responders need additional help. So I think you'll see the evolution of maps. Today we are at that foundation, right? We're step 1. The next one, obviously, the NextNav we've been working with many of our customers around 3D data, large multi-story facilities. That work is absolutely already underway. There's emerging best practices on it, and it clearly will be one of the next big topics. Not every community has lots of large buildings. When you do, it's a massive problem, right? So it's you have to have that view on what you're tackling.
Yeah.
So I agree with the beginning of the journey. Yes, this is the foundation of indoor floor plans, is the essential piece. Yes, Z-axis in 3D building is absolutely going to be work that's underway. The only thing I can kind of comment, I'd say, it seems daunting, but I think going back to basics and saying, here's the simple exercise of what data am I collecting? What are the problem I'm solving? And who's everyone that needs to see it, right? Just mapping out that view of how to make a single source of truth and just start the process.
Awesome. Eric, I know NextNav's 3D enablement is probably really thinking about that 3D frontier and what's next. So did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, and I think Todd touched on it a little bit, but when we go down to the foundation of collection, how do we make it, how do we grow it at scale? How do we automate it so it's just included? And then it becomes a simple process when we get to the point of scaling this collection, because that's key. Beyond that, once it's done, as Todd said, we talk about routing. I mean, the first thing I think about is just skipping the concept of looking at a 3D model and knowing that, hey, you know what? This is their elevation. Boom, that indoor map pops for that elevation. I don't have to go to a 3D model and then the 2D model because I know what floor they're on. Also, contextual visualization for the responders and those responders, including the dispatchers, of saying, hey, are you in room 102? No, maybe I'm off on the floor and I can look at the floor plan above and below and say, are you in room 202? Can you identify what room you're in? So it gives me a context of delivering that by having that indoor floor as well, in case you're off, because it's not perfect yet and it may never be perfect, but how do we get that and get that location so I can see that? I also think about just routing in the long term of, hey, what if the building's on fire and the fire is somewhere, the elevators get shut down, that stairwell shut down, how do I connect you to evacuate or get into the building in other areas by connecting through indoor maps and tracking the responders through that as well. So, I mean, I think there's a lot. We are in the foundation. The foundation is big, and the concept of collecting the data is big, as you guys know, and we keep talking about. When people ask me about it, why does it take so long? I talk about, each one of those buildings, depending on the size of it, could be the equivalent of mapping an entire city in regard to the streets and address points. So all of a sudden, you've got a city contained in one building, and you've got how many buildings in a city. So we've got to solve that scale problem and get there. And it's good. But again, the future is very bright and exciting for us at this point.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. And Casey, I know you work the closest to the end users in the field. What is their take on the future, and why are they invested in starting this journey now for their future?
Yeah, we are wholly dependent on vendors like NextNav and RapidDeploy because we can collect the data, but we need their help to get that displayed into the PSAP and displayed. And then, we're dependent on, cell phone companies, and as those device-based locations location from those devices getting more accurate, then the more accurate plans we need to have. And we know that it's only going to get more accurate from here. So we're trying to do this in a way that, you know, a forward thinking approach to this project where, even though right now, you know, what are we getting, Eric? 3 to 5 meters in a Z axis? 3, okay. So 3 meters, and so that could put you a floor above or a floor below where your caller is actually coming from, but we know that's going to get better. So we need to create this data, collect this data, and display this data in a way that as soon as we're getting 1 meter accuracy, we've got the data that can work with that and provide that accurate location. You know, talking to, we try to keep our call takers in the loop, and as their world changes, we have to adapt to that. So if there's some new technology comes out, watches, iWatches now can call 911. They have to know how to handle that. We have to know what kind of data we're going to get out of it so that it's in a usable format to them. We have to know what they want to see. If an incident occurs at a hospital, what information needs to be immediately visible on the map versus what can be behind a click or a pop-up versus what can be a link to open on another screen, or can it cover up their map? So all of that stuff, we have to take in all of those factors, and the even tougher part is going to be that's going to be different jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and then maintenance of that. We hope to partner with the schools in our region. You know, if a school has a CTE program, a GIS program, even a public safety program, we're hoping to be able to incorporate that so that it can be part of their every semester, or even you know, a special project before school starts, for an honor student, maybe something like that, where there is oversight. And then of course we'll have to do our own QC, but there's no way that NCT911 ourselves can manage that project. So we're really going to have great partners, be it vendor partners who can help us with additional, you know, people, boots on the ground to go out and collect the data, or booties in the chairs to help manually update the attributes in the data, or we partner with schools, or maybe we hire interns. We're still looking at all of those options and really trying to find out what's the best. There's just a lot of moving parts to this type of project.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, I think the biggest theme there is stakeholder engagement. I mean,
absolutely,
a small jurisdiction in the county, completely different stakeholder engagement and requirements than larger jurisdictions, and people have different CAD programs that handle data different, and they have different operating boundaries. So there's just a lot of variables, and trying to design solutions for each of those. So, well, we have a few minutes left, so I wanted to wrap this up. I wanted to first thank our panelists here. I know that in the public safety world, we have NINA coming up. I know our panelists will be there and at exhibiting or attending. DATAMARK has a booth, 1001. And then we're also going to send out links following this up with the panelists' emails. So if you wanted to reach out and contact for more. And then if you want to learn more about indoor mapping in general, I know DATAMARK has a rich YouTube channel in their website, and in a lot of different media forms that we put a lot of information out. I know today we actually just released a press release of our CCTV camera integration that kind of aggregates a bunch of different building owners' CCTV cameras from with open standards that will enable things like being able to control those, and really give some of that power to first responders at the desk or in the field. So innovations like that always tune in to DATAMARKs, but also RapidDeploys and NextNav's websites and social media to learn the latest and greatest information. So we have just a few seconds left. So Eric, Todd, Casey, I wanted to give you guys any last minute feedback or anything that you guys wanted to comment in the next few minutes.
I'll say thank you. And I mean, one of the things that I actually love about this industry is our customers collaborate. So if you're trying to solve and you're being tasked with something that's happening all across the country, there's different funding, different legislation, but it's clearly going in the direction of understanding where people are indoors. So if anybody needs help, we're always happy to help and connect you with other customers of ours or other people in the industry. Reach out, there's help.
I agree. And thank you for having me on today. And Michelle, it looks like you've done a lot of this work. Please tell me your secrets. What worked, what didn't? Is there something my team and I have overlooked that might help us get this done?
Yep, absolutely. Matt, just thank you very much. And like I said, we're here to help with the collection. You know, Casey's one and NCT's one that's doing the collection themselves, depending on their tools they're using. How do you leverage our 3D capabilities to be sure you're adding that there? We're here to talk, help, and like Todd said, you know, the beauty of this industry is about collaboration, and so people need to leverage it, and we're here to help. So reach out to us any way we can help, and through you guys, any ways, we're here for it. So thank you, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.